What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today I kind of want to talk about the Chicago Bulls and whether or not the Bulls do have a problem in, I guess, beating the lower caliber teams in terms of the East and the Western Conference. Not necessarily that the teams that we faced and we've lost to have always sucked, but at the end of the day, are maybe teams that the Bulls should be beating and teams that the Bulls are a little bit better than. Do we have a problem facing those teams? Now, ladies and gentlemen, last season it was a complete 180. We could always beat the lower caliber teams or the teams that we should be beating, but we simply could not beat the upper echelon teams in terms of the Eastern Conference. Now, for whatever reason, we seem to be doing very well against the top teams in the East. We've beaten some very good quality teams, but at the same time, we are losing to teams that we should be beating. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more in detail about that situation and whether or not that is a realistic, I guess, assumption to make for the Chicago Bulls. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and whether or not you believe they do have a problem beating lower caliber teams at this point. Now, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there's still so much to talk about in relation to this Bulls team, and an assumption like that can definitely go away if you actually show what you're capable of and beat some of the lower echelon teams. But I want to go a little bit more in detail about this because I think it goes more than just looking at a record and saying, yes, we can't beat these teams and stuff like that. We do have a problem, because I think that's the basic answer. You look at the Orlando Magic record and we lose to them. You look at the Spurs record, you lose to them. You look at the Wizards record, you look at the Raptors record, you look at every, I guess, team that we've lost to record, including the OKC Thunder. And yes, you could arguably say we do have a problem losing to lower echelon teams or lower caliber teams. But I don't think it's that clear as day, ladies and gentlemen, because in my opinion, I've already seen the Bulls do better against good teams compared to last year. I even think our record is probably still at this point better than what it was last year when we versed good teams. I'm not denying that, but at the end of the day, the fact that we're losing these games is very concerning because there's no guarantees when you verse the best teams in the East and the best teams in the West that you're going to walk away with wins. At the end of the day, I am still very worried at the fact that we are losing to lower caliber teams because those higher up teams, for example, the Utah Jazz are 12-8 at the moment. The Warriors are not necessarily doing great, but we know their quality. The Phoenix Suns, these games are coming up soon and they are top teams in the NBA. And I am worried that we could potentially lose some of these games and all of a sudden we are losing to lower caliber teams and we're losing to higher caliber teams. I still think it's too early to say that we have a problem in that area, but I do think that it's not too early to say that there are certain teams that we're losing to that really does speak to our issues. And I kind of want to talk about the size issues, ladies and gentlemen, in which the teams that we're losing to. Some things I've noticed, and it's not necessarily true for every team that we've lost to, but a lot of the teams that we've lost to are much bigger than the Chicago Bulls. And we love small ball. We play small ball. A lot of the losses we had are without Andre Drummond as well, so that's definitely something to consider. Some of them are without Zach LaVine. But we are a team that really thrives on transition play, really thrive on small ball, really thrives on switching and trying to get deflections. And that's where our bread and butter is. That's where most of our wins come from. That's also the problem when we lose as well. It's the small ball game, ladies and gentlemen. We play small ball and other teams play a little bit bigger. It's not, I guess, it's not clear as day for many of you guys, but think of the teams that we've lost to. Look at the Washington Wizards. They have very, very tall players in terms of their front court, ladies and gentlemen. They're not necessarily a small ball team. Daniel Gafford plays center for them as a backup. Porzingis from time to time plays their main center position. They've got Hachimura out there that's a really tall player as well. And they all of a sudden are a little bit bigger. That's the first team that we've lost to. That's a bigger team than us. You got the Toronto Raptors, a team that is lengthy every single position outside of their center position. They play a little bit bigger than the Chicago Bulls in most positions. That's a team that we lost to at the end of the day. That's something to consider. I think the Pelicans play bigger than us as well. Valanciunas, you got Zion. At certain times in that game, you got Jackson Hayes, you got Larry Nance Jr. all playing a lot bigger than the Chicago Bulls. We play Patrick Williams, and outside of that, everybody else is a guard. So again, really interesting thing to consider over there against the Pelicans. The Magic, at the end of the day as well, they play Wendell Carter. They had Mo Bamba in that game. They got Wagner, who's a very good player as well. Again, much bigger than the Chicago Bulls. And I always felt like due to their length, they would cause a lot of Bulls players problems. And again, we lost that game. So it's clear as day that they caused us a lot of problems. And obviously the recent game against OKC. OKC, I said in that game reaction, reminds me a lot of the Toronto Raptors in the fact that they are very tall, very lengthy players all around the court, but their center position is arguably their weakest at the moment. Obviously, their star center that they just recently drafted will be out for the whole year most likely, and maybe that will be a problem that won't be an issue for them in the future. But even then, you could arguably say their center position, they're not exactly naturally built centers like what a Vucevic or Andre Drummond is. So again, a lot of the teams, maybe outside the center position, are very, very tall in all other areas. And that creates big problems for our team, unfortunately. And it's not a secret that in a lot of the losses that we have, points in the paint has been the biggest issue for the Chicago Bulls. Our defense has been solid. I think our perimeter defense has also been very solid. And the reason why we lost to OKC is not because they outshot us from the three-point line. It's their points in the paint. It's in the cuts. It's in the backdoor cuts, the front lane cuts. It's obviously in offensive rebounding and putting stuff in the paint as well. It's the fouls. These are how we're losing a lot of our games. And sometimes it's because we don't have the physical presence and we don't have the, I guess, the length presence in our team compared to other teams. We match up very well with Boston and they play smaller. Yes, Milwaukee's probably the outlier. They play much bigger than the Chicago Bulls, but we obviously won that game. But I do feel like there is a pattern starting to form, not necessarily just based on records, because if that's the case, there are some teams that we have beaten that do have negative records at the moment. So I think it's too early to say we have a big problem beating teams that are not as good as us. I think our problem is a lot of the teams that we've lost to play very similar to each other and have the length advantage over the Chicago Bulls or have the physicality advantage over the Chicago Bulls. So that is the area that I feel like the Bulls need to improve on in the future. Whether it's a trade or whether we have a mentality shift or a change in our thought process, we've got to become much more physical. I think the game in which we won against Milwaukee is because we brought physicality to them. Patrick Williams was physical on Giannis. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan had his best defensive game and he was very physical. Guys like Levine and Ayo and Kobe, all of them brought physicality to the game. And again, the inconsistency from that game to the OKC game is night and day. Our defense was much worse, but that's because our physicality was much worse. To beat teams like the Raptors and beat teams like OKC, yes, you got to use your centers much more effectively, and that's something for another time. But you have to match their physicality, and you have to match their energy. Those two things I feel like were not met against the OKC Thunder, and that's why I think we lost that game. But I do feel like that's a trend that is going to be reoccurring for the Chicago Bulls. We've got to be very careful about all of our defensive, I guess, struggles, and we've got to be very careful about our physicality as well. We've got to learn how to overcome that. We've got to learn how to adapt and become more physical. That's the next step for the Bulls, I believe. And hopefully they can do it against the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings and every other team that we have. Hopefully we can find a way to become a much more physically, I guess, demanding team. We shall wait and see. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.